Calev, thanks for having me. I think that India faces disputed boundaries and competing territorial claims with both Pakistan and China. And these borders have remained contentious for decades. And if we look back at history, defense cooperation was the main cause of interaction between both countries period of even establishing diplomatic relations with Israel in 1992. And along the years, Israel proved itself as a reliable source of advanced weapon, even in times of crisis, in Kargil War, even in times when the U.S. sanctioned India because of its nuclear test. And India concern have increased as we look at is today's China, with defense budget 4 times bigger than India's. And China today is stronger and more likely to have an assertive claims in its immediate neighborhood. And India needs to prepare itself, especially when both China and Pakistan are cooperating right now and these days in defense, in fields of economy and defense. And these actually had impact on Israel relations and defense relations with India. If we look at the numbers, during the period between 2015 and 2019, India's armed imports from Israel increased by 175%, making the Israel New Delhi's second largest supplier of major arms. And if we look on the specific areas in defense, I think that India today needs more advanced equipment such as UAVs and drones. And there is a need for acquisitions of UAV to add to the existing fleet of these drones for meeting the requirements, for example, of the Air Force fleet. And as we know, China is one of the biggest manufacturers as well of UAVs and exporters of UAVs. And since the standoff in 2020, India has increased its patrolling in the area and as a result, increased deployment of soldiers, but also increased its deployment and acquisitions of UAVs and drones as well from Israel.
Right. Now, Orshit, as we saw in the report, the ties between Israel and India really flourished during this political era of Prime Minister Modi and his BJP party. But how firm are these ties if, for example, another party comes to power like the Congress Party in India?
Well, the India-Israel defense relationship has been growing rapidly and still much to the terrain of the left parties and pro-Arab members within the Indian polity. But we must understand that today this has changed. Israel is important to India irrespectively of which party is in power. Today, even the left parties understand India's Israel importance in terms of technology, of agriculture, in water management, and how Israel is important to help the developing the life of millions of Indians. And even the left cannot ignore it. The left parties cannot ignore it. Another important reason for that is the changing geopolitics. For example, the marginalization of the Palestinian issue, even among Arab countries. And I think the Abraham Accords are a great example of it. And I think even if you look at it, it's mutual in Israel. The left and wing parties agreed on India's importance. The great example actually is this visit of the defense minister, the fact that this is happening at times that the coalition lost its majority in the Knesset and we face a spike terror attack against Israeli civilians. So I think if you hear anything else, it's just the mayor of politics.
Right. It certainly seems to have become a real priority for both nations. Dr. Orshit Birvadker, thank you for joining us on I-24 News.